Think about the best versions of these fighters for a second. Roy Jones Jr. in his prime. He had hand speed and reactions like no other fighter in history. A young Muhammad Ali danced around Sonny Liston. He looked impossible to beat. Mike Tyson at 20 years old, knocking out grown men with lifetimes of training in just seconds. They all had great careers, then they retired, then for one reason or another, they decided to come back. And how did that go for them? Well, Roy Jones started getting knocked out cold of fighters who wouldn't have touched him in his prime. Ali was already showing signs of Parkinson's. He took horrendous damage in his first stoppage loss against Larry Holmes. And Mike Tyson, well, we all seen what happened there. Now an old man was only able to land a handful of punches in an 8-round fight against a novice boxer in Jake Paul. And he was looking every bit of 58 years old. These are the same men, the same hands, but a shadow of what they once were. And most people think, oh, they just get old and this is what happens. Like age is a simple switch that you flip and suddenly the greatest fighters in history can't box anymore. But there's clearly something more going on here. Something that builds up quietly over a career that doesn't always show up in the gym, and something that eventually catches up with just about every single fighter who stays in the game for too long, or they decide to come back too late. Now, before I get into the reasons why, I just want to tell you how I know so much about this stuff. I had 106 fights in my career. I've been punched in the bloody head more times than I want to count. And since then, I've had my brain scanned just about every single year. And what I've saw in these brain scans made it clear that I was dealing with the same thing as these legends. But luckily, I didn't decide to have a comeback fight. And in this video, I'm going to show you 3 reasons why fighters seem to fall apart. And also some steps that is scientifically proven that can change this happening to all the fighters in the future. Now, first, let's talk about Roy Jones, my favorite fighter of all time. For years, Roy made everyone else look slow. He had his hands down. He was darting around, in and out, humiliating champions with speed, reflexes, and just that instinct that he had. At his best, he was making world-class fighters miss by an inch and then punishing them before they had time to reset. That kind of style is beautiful when you're young, but it can be brutal when you're not. When Roy stepped in with Antonio Otava in the rematch of their first punishing fight, the knockout loss signaled the end of his time as the best fighter in the world. I was gutted at the time. But then 4 months later, he fought Glenn Johnson and got knocked out badly again. And everyone was saying he should retire, me included. And he did, but only for about a year. And when he came back, knockout loss after knockout loss. Punishment in every fight. And then years more of brutal competition where he could barely get hit without his legs wobbling underneath him. Yes, his speed diminished. Yes, his reflexes dulled. But the scariest part about this is that his brain had clearly reached the damage threshold. Getting knocked out twice back to back, coupled with his declining reflexes, was a recipe for disaster. But maybe he could have avoided this by the things that I'm going to talk about in this video. Now, I can't help but think if these older fighters could take care of their brains more, not just by less hard sparring, but also by having a better diet, stop drinking alcohol, and by taking the scientifically proved supplements that I'm using right now to help me with my cells and my cognitive functioning, would they have went on longer? Now, the thing is, the scientific research about different types of supplements weren't around when either Roy Jones, Mike Tyson, or Muhammad Ali were younger. But if they were, how would they be? If modern day fighters are taking this sort of supplementation right now, that I'm going to talk about in a little bit, how would their brains be? Especially if they're not doing the hard sparring all the time. Would their careers last a way longer? Could they stay sharp up until their 40s, maybe their 50s, and keep that reaction time there as well? Well, I'll come back to that in a second. But now, first, like the part that most people miss, it's not just about the big knockouts that's taking something from you. It's every spar, every fight, every clean shot that lands on your head. The accumulation of a lifetime of punches hitting you slowly is chipping away our tolerance for punishment, leaving us more vulnerable for damage even with less powered shots. And there's been studies with amateur boxers with headgear and big gloves on that show markers of brain cell injury in spinal fluid within days of a fight, even if the fight didn't feel like it was punishing. So what I'm saying is all of these shots accumulate over time. They really are making a difference. So when we see an older fight like Roy Jones, the question shouldn't be where did his speed go? It should be, after a lifetime of sparring, having over 100 amateur fights at the highest level and dozens of professional fights in his Hall of Fame career, how healthy was his brain before he stepped through them ropes. Now, before I talk more about Muhammad Ali and Mike Tyson, I need to just tell you, when I got my brain scanned in the Cleveland Clinic in Las Vegas for part of the largest fighters' brain studies in the world, I found out that I've got a large tear in my membrane. And this is what attaches your brain to your skull. And it was really scary to find this out. Ever since then, I've done whatever I can do to help my brain perform at its very best. I'm doing things like exercise, eating good food. I stopped drinking alcohol altogether. And a big thing also is supplementation, because there are scientific studies out there right now with some supplements that weren't around when Muhammad Ali was younger, or if they were, I believe that these possibly could have helped him and the other fighters prolong their careers. Now, the main one that I'm taking every day is NMN. This helps with better cellular repair. And there's so many celebrities taking NMN right now because it's said that it can't just repair your cells, but it can reverse them. It can reverse your aging. Another one that I'm taking every single day is creatine, because there's so many studies out there now how it can help with our cognitive health. And of course, I'm taking my omega-3 every day. Another big thing that's supporting our cognitive health as well. And I get all of my supplements from a research company called DoNotAge.org. And the owner of this company is a professional boxer who is obsessed with brain health. And this is why I really trust this company and I promote them. And if you know me, you know I don't talk any BS. I highly recommend DoNotAge.org. And I want to thank them not only for sponsoring this video, but for helping me stay as sharp as possible after getting punched in the head so many bloody times. Now, I want to talk about reason number 2 why this stuff is happening with all the fighters. Because when people talks about fighters decline, a lot of them think, you know, it's because you can't get yourself in shape anymore. But if you do get yourself in shape, you do enough rounds on the bag, you run enough miles, any ring rust from time off after you've retired or issues with your timing will disappear. And that's just not how it works. Boxing reflexes, their ability to see a punch coming and react to it, isn't about physical speed at all. It's about pattern recognition, coordination, your brain's ability to see an opening and your body's ability to react to that and come back with a punch of your own. Now, countless rounds spent sparring against different styles and learning different tricks. Your brain builds a library of automatic responses. Like we can see when our opponent's shoulder dips or twitches a certain way just before they throw that punch, and then we can get out the way of it. Their hips might turn a particular way, or they might do something before that punch comes out where we can read it and we can get out of the way of that punch before it even comes. Now, when you watch Muhammad Ali in his prime, there's nothing else like it. Even today, there's not another heavyweight that's been able to move effortlessly around the ring and react to punches the way he did and throw his counter punches. But the older he got towards the end of his career, he started slowing down. He stopped sparring as much. He started filming movies and taking exhibition bouts to travel and have fun, and which I kind of don't blame him with that sort of thing. But then when he lost his title to Leon Spinks in 1978, he only sparred around 20 rounds for the entire camp, and the performance showed it. His eyes were still good enough to see the opportunities, but he just couldn't pull the trigger and make his body react the way he could when he was younger. Now, for the rematch, he overcorrected that and put in over 200 rounds sparring, and this was one last push that sharpened his tools enough to get victory. But the damage he took in the process pushed him over the edge into retirement. His speech was already slurring and his hands were already trembling. When he came back the following year against Larry Holmes, well, all that inactivity and all of that damage compounded, and he was no longer able to even see shots coming. And the ones that you don't see coming, mate, them are the ones that do the most damage. Now, he increased his sparring intensity as he thought that that might brush off the ring rust for his comeback, but we seen what happened. Then there was my mate Sugar Ray Leonard. If you didn't know, I've trained Sugar Ray Leonard. I've done some virtual sparring with him, I've done some mitt work with him and all that. Great fella. Well, he famously had unofficial fights with the top middleweight contenders ahead of his return with Marvin Hagler. But the problem is, when you're older, you can't keep up the same intensity. The lifetime of wear and tear, injuries, and the damage, it all makes it that much harder to spar the hard rounds that you used to do and sharpen your timing. As I said earlier, that all adds up. But that doesn't mean that there aren't steps that you can take. Bernard Hopkins, I think he was one of the first ones to start talking about training smarter, not harder. As he aged, he kept away from hard sparring. He was focusing on specific drills that kept his timing sharp without taking so many risks and unnecessary blows. He really focused on footwork to be able to get out of the range so he wasn't getting hit and taking these punches. He was a great fighter. Now, number 3, this is where the people who say he just got old overnight, that crowd is particularly right. Yes, fighters slow down with age, the fast twitch muscle fibers do decline, recovery gets worse, reaction time drops, hormones change in our bodies, but that's only part of it. The brain's ability to regulate blood flow to active regions also declines with age as well. Processing speeds, decision making and reaction times all suffer. Automatic processes become manual, and manual is bloody exhausting. Just think about Mike Tyson in his prime. He was doing that stuff without having to think about it. His whole style was built on violence, on explosiveness, on that great output, them fast feet, them sharp knockout blows, them brutal combinations, and that overwhelming pressure that he was just taking anyone out. And that's the kind of style that needs a huge amount of energy. So when he came back at 58 years old, coming out of a 20-year retirement, like 20 years since his last fight, although he physically looked in good shape, I think he had some abs there, he was exhausted within the first minute. He couldn't move around that ring. His brain was willing, he could see the opportunities, but that automatic process hasn't been used for so long, he couldn't just pull the trigger and knock out Jake Paul. Now, Jones, Tyson and Ali, each of them faced 3 issues simultaneously in their crazy comebacks. And each issue compounded the others. All of the punches that they'd taken from their Hall of Fame careers had chipped away and damaged their threshold. And because the sparring was now less punishing, they were doing less of it, meaning that they weren't really sharpening the reactions like they were back in the day. And with the reactions slowing down, well, what does that mean? Well, you get hit more. When you get hit more, it does more damage to your brain, and it kind of slows everything down. And the outcome was never going to be different. Now, I'm 41 years old. I've got to train different to what I did when I was a 23-year-old Olympian, but I still train boxing all the time. And if you want to see me, and I'll tell you exactly how I train different, if you click here and watch this video next, I break it down. 23-year-old me versus 40-year-old me. Click here and watch this video next.